The American Civil War 1861 to 1865 was not only a turning point in the nation's political and social history, it was a profound economic shock that reshaped the North, devastated the South, and laid the groundwork for the modern American economy. While the war settled the question of secession and ended slavery, it also transformed industry, agriculture, labor systems, and government finance in ways that would shape the country for generations. The North, industrial boom and federal expansion. In the North, the Civil War accelerated industrialization and modernized the economy. Wartime demand for weapons, uniforms, railroads, and other supplies spurred rapid growth in factories and manufacturing centers. Northern industries thrived, and cities like Pittsburgh, Chicago, and Cincinnati expanded rapidly. The conflict also stimulated the development of national transportation and communication networks, such as railroads and the telegraph, enhancing economic integration. To fund the war, the federal government implemented sweeping financial innovations. The Legal Tender Act of 1862 introduced paper money, greenbacks, while the National Banking Acts created a standardized banking system and a national currency. These reforms strengthened federal control over the economy and laid the foundation for the modern financial system. The North also saw the birth of the modern income tax and massive war bond sales, drawing ordinary citizens into the financial support of government operations. Although inflation did occur, the overall economic infrastructure of the North emerged stronger from the war. The South, widespread destruction and economic collapse. In contrast, the South's economy was shattered by the war. The region's wealth had been built on slave labor and cotton exports, both of which were devastated by the conflict. The Union blockade of southern ports choked off trade, and widespread destruction of infrastructure, railroads, factories, and farms, left the Southern economy in ruins. Perhaps the most dramatic impact was the collapse of the plantation system. With the emancipation of nearly 4 million enslaved people, the South lost its primary labor force. Landowners now faced the challenge of finding labor under a new system, resulting in widespread adoption of sharecropping, a deeply exploitative system that often trapped freed people in cycles of poverty and debt. The Confederate government printed money to fund the war, leading to runaway inflation. By war's end, Confederate currency was virtually worthless, and Southern banks had failed en masse. The economic collapse would have long-lasting effects. The South remained largely rural and economically stagnant for decades. National consequences, shifting power and regional imbalances. The economic consequences of the Civil War shifted the balance of power in the United States. With the Southern economy crippled and the Northern economy booming, economic and political power increasingly resided in the North. Tariff policies, infrastructure investment, and economic legislation reflected Northern priorities in the post-war era. The Homestead Act of 1862, passed during the war, encouraged westward expansion by granting land to settlers, linking economic growth with the development of the American frontier. The Pacific Railway Acts facilitated the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, which opened up new markets and accelerated national economic integration. Meanwhile, the economic inequality between North and South persisted well into the 20th century. Southern recovery was slow, and efforts to modernize were hindered by poverty, racial tensions, and a lack of investment in education and infrastructure. Labor and workforce transformation. The Civil War also transformed the American labor system. In the North, increased reliance on immigrant labor and women workers helped fill wartime labor shortages and foreshadowed future shifts in the workforce. In the South, the end of slavery forced a complete redefinition of labor relations, from a slave-based economy to a system of wage labor and tenant farming. Freed people sought autonomy through land ownership and wage labor, but their efforts were often thwarted by discriminatory policies, lack of access to credit, and white resistance. The promise of 40 acres and a mule remained largely unfulfilled. Conclusion. The Civil War profoundly reshaped the American economy, creating lasting divides and laying the foundation for the nation's industrial ascent. While the North emerged stronger, more centralized, and industrialized, the South was left impoverished and struggling to rebuild. These economic outcomes reinforced regional inequalities and influenced national politics for generations. Today, the war's economic legacy remains evident in the disparities between North and South and in the federal government's expanded role in economic affairs. The Civil War was not just a conflict of armies, but a battle over the future economic direction of the United States, a battle whose outcomes still echo in American life.